All right, we're live.
Thank you. This is Senate Appropriations, and we're continuing our work on the FY 2024 budget, and we're taking testimony today from the Agency of Agriculture. I see that the secretary is here in his mobile office, apparently, and I'm going to have you introduce your staff. Some of us are meeting remotely because we actually are in quarantine as a result of COVID. So we have a combination of some of us remote and some in the committee room. So with that, Secretary Tebbetts, I'm going to let you introduce your staff and then leave it up to you how you want to present your budget. As you know, this committee, unlike the House, has less time to work on the budget. So our focus is really going to be on not, the usual things around, fee for space and digital services, but what would be the high points of your budget? So would leave it up to you to present the information and what you feel we should know about why we should fund the Agency of Agriculture.
Great. Well, thank you, Senator, and thank you all, Senators, for allowing me to testify. Yes, I'm coming to you from St. Albans today. A couple of people joining me on the line as well from our team at the Agency of Agriculture would be Amy Messer she is our Director of Finance, and also Nicole Dubuque is joining us, Head of Administrative Services. Just as a footnote, many of you may know, or maybe some have not heard yet, but Diane Boffel has retired from the agency. Mm-hmm. So Nicole, who has a rich history in state government, is coming to us from the Agency of Human Services through DCF. So you may recognize her in your past work with DCF and work with some of the children over there. So they're joining me on the line today. Amy, if you want to kick things off, I don't know if it's going to be, if we're going to share the screen or not, but I'll just kick it off with our mission. And this is important, why you asked why you're funding us, to facilitate, support, encourage the growth and viability of agriculture while protecting the working landscape, human health, animal health, plant health, consumers, and the environment. So that's our mission. A couple of highlights, Senators. We have about a $500,000 general fund increase over last year's appropriation. We have 7 exempt positions and 140 classified positions. Some of the things that you'll see that are a little bit different this year, you have approved a significant grant from USDA through our Dairy Innovation Center. It's a regional grant that we administer at the Agency of Agriculture, and you'll see the figures there. So we're getting a considerable amount of money, about $9.8 million coming our way through a multi-year arrangement with USDA. Just to highlight, next page, the 6 appropriations. We have administration, we have food safety and consumer protection, agriculture development, public health and agriculture resource management, the lab, which we call VALE, Vermont Agriculture Environmental Laboratory, and of course, agriculture water quality. Next page. So you'll see our total budget ask is $51,202,396. It's broken down in various pockets from general funds to special funds to federal funds. And then we've got a small part of it for interdepartmental transfer funds at about 1.5%.
Secretary, you have quite a bit in special funds. Can you explain the source of those special funds? Are they the fees that you charge, for example?
Yeah, we have various programs through our licensing and our fees, and a lot of that comes through that. Amy, if you want to elaborate on any more of those, but most of those come through, either through the farm division or through the consumer protection. We have weights and measures. We have all kinds of programs with, scales, et cetera. Amy, you want to give another snapshot of some of those?
Sure. Yeah, we have
meat handling fees. We have weights and measures, different fees for retail establishments. We have permits for water quality for the LFOs, the large farms and the medium farms. We have fees for seed dealers, pesticides, different applicators, pesticide applicators. There's various fees in statute, nursery dealers, milk haulers, slaughtering facilities.
Okay. The reason that I ask is because I believe in the budget is included a recommended $25 fee for the testing of charging stations, at least level 2. And in the course of discussion within Senate Transportation, the chair raised the question about the $25 and the extent to which it covers the cost of providing, that service for consumers to make sure that they're getting the full, kilowatt hours that they might be paying for. And the chair was saying, well, maybe we should look at the adequacy of that fee. And then that gets into the larger discussion around since any of these fees have been increased to reflect the cost. Obviously, on the first page, salaries and operating costs have increased substantially over the last few years. So the question that I've been asked is that $25 fee sufficient? And should we in fact be looking at something that is more reflective of the cost of providing that particular service? And so I realize that gets into a larger discussion around the fact that none of these fees have been increased, I think, unless you've moved some separately in maybe the last, 6 years. So that it's with that discussion and that recommendation. So the question is, should the $25 be $25? And that's a different question, but that's just to give you a background of it. This isn't an idle question that, this is the reason behind it. So why don't we keep going?
Sure. And would you like me to respond just in general on that?
I can follow up with that with Anson or some of the agents.
Yeah, we will do that. So I think we're on the areas of increase now, which would be page 5, and that breaks down some of the details with internal services, retirement, some of the things that really we don't have much control of just because of cost of living increases. Mm-hmm. And then it also highlights the Innovations Center as well. And then there's some slight areas of decrease that we have taken care of. We had a private donation from Farm to School that has gone away. We also have the farm show, which hasn't met in a couple of years. That donation has gone away. And also we no longer needed a temporary position of a IT position. So that went away in a decrease area.
So the almost $10 million from USDA, very significant influx of money into the state. Can you just, for the benefit of the committee and anyone who's listening to your testimony, just give us a very brief summary of what that grant is intended to do and how the state will benefit from such a large amount of money?
Yes, we are very fortunate to have this money from USDA and a couple of pockets of money. Where the money is going, it's either going to the farm. We've had grants that have been given to on-farm improvements, for example, storage. So we've had a granting program for bulk tanks, chillers, et cetera. So that's one example of where it may go. And the other area is processing. So we have a number of processors in our region that need upgrades or want to increase their capacity. So some dollars will be earmarked for that. We also have had some marketing dollars that have gone to some dairy companies. And keep in mind, this is a regional grant. We manage it at the Agency of Agriculture, but it covers all of New England, New York, Pennsylvania, and Maryland.
Well, that makes it appear quite small in retrospect.
Well, yeah, and we're learning that as the word is traveling to some of our neighboring states. For example, I mentioned the on-farm storage. We just completed that evaluation of that, and we had about $1 million to distribute for bulk tanks and on-farm storage and improvements at the farm, but we had $8 million worth of requests throughout the region. So you can see how we disappointed probably more farmers than we pleased with that, and we'll be announcing those shortly. But we are going to do another round of that as well. So we're doing stuff with packaging, we're doing stuff with grazing. We're doing stuff of trying to develop new products through dairy. We're working with Cornell right now on a contest to get some of our processors to develop new products for the consumers. So that's just a snapshot of the money that's being used to this Dairy Innovation Center that's housed at the agency.
Okay. Thank you.
Maybe move to section 7. These are all general fund, some of our programs, the fair stipends, the farm to plate, the Natural Resources Conservation Council, farm to school, local food grants. These are all level funded for this year. So there's no increases in those that we're asking for, but all important programs for the agency.
Okay, so these are level funded then?
Yes.
Okay, because we had some testimony. I think Senator Starr and the committee can remember. I think it was farm to school, keeping the current, and the other was I can't remember what the second one was off the top of my head. But anyway, I just want to confirm that is, and that what they were asking for is continuation at the current level of funding. And working lands, the base right now is $1 million.
Yes, and last year you increased that. I think we were in the $560,000 range. The base is $1 million. You will see later on in our presentation that we are asking for $3 million in one-time money as well. So for a total package of $4 million in the working lands program. Do you want to go through the, in the past, we haven't gone through the crosswalks. Do you want to go through the crosswalks, or you just want to do the highlights?
I think for now, we just want to do the highlights. So working lands, the governor is proposing a $3 million one-time increase.
And keep the base level funded at $1 million.
And let me ask, there's been quite a bit of attention around this program has been in place for 10 years. It raises the question, actually, I'm meeting someone who's doing research at Dartmouth around how we use data to make decisions around how programs, what we fund, how we fund it, how we know programs are working. It just struck me at the 10-year level, and looking through the list of entities that have received grants under this program. A number of entities have received grants multiple times. I'm raising the question about, is this a good time to be looking at how that program works, the way the different sectors that have been supported, and sort of have, with the benefit of a decade of experience, what has been sort of that cumulative impact and outcomes from that program. And I'm just throwing it out as kind of something we put in place. And then the question is, at what point do we sort of take a deeper dive in terms of how it looks? Does it need to be changed? Where has the money flowed? And what that aggregate experience is over time.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, we we always want to evaluate, I think, every year of what we're doing and if we need to make improvements or changes to any particular program. We do have some data, and we can share with you an impact report that we put together and explains everything from, who received the dollars and in the farm and forestry sector, how many jobs were created, and how it impacted. For example, one important part of the the Working Lands program is we want to have an impact throughout the food chain. For example, so if you're a cheesemaker, are you buying milk from multiple farms and helping the sort of the food chain perspective of that and creating more jobs along the way? The board has a scoring system, and it's a combination of appointees from the legislature and the governor, and they have a scoring system, and they allocate priorities. And we've discovered over the last few years we've had more asks than what we can fund. But I can certainly share with the committee an evaluation of the sort of the decade's work that's been done with that, and it may give you a more of a perspective. And if there's things or if you're hearing things from your researchers, or if you've heard some stuff from the legislature, we'd certainly entertain any thoughts to improve the program over the years.
Okay, thank you.
So let's go. I think we'll go to page 11 now, and this is here's a couple of highlights and a couple of important asks that you touched upon briefly. So we are starting to put together, hopefully, this in the consumer protection area. This is for the EV charging regulatory program. Right now, we do not have a program. Nationally, they've come together with some data and some regulations on how we should be evaluating and charging folks that go to a charging station, and how they're charged, and making sure that they're compliant. We do that with gas pumps, but now the evolution with more and more EV charging stations, we believe we need some help there. So we're asking for some equipment, which is $110,000 for 2 testing units. This will help us with the EV charging. And we're also asking for a new employee to help start up that program and get it running. We've been working with both the Transportation Agency and also the Department of Public Service on this program the last few years, but we think now is the time to launch this program under our weights and measures program. The other is 2 positions in food safety. We are seeing more and more people process meat from slaughterhouses, but also in the cut and wrap sector. And the state of Vermont does not want to be the one that's slowing down getting meat processed. So we're asking for 2 meat inspectors, and we do get support from the federal government on that because of our relationship with USDA. I believe it's, and Amy, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's a 65-35 split. So USDA will pay 65% of the cost of those inspectors, and Vermont will pick up 35%. And on the, there's also at the bottom, you'll see a one-time ask of a little over $1 million. Over the summer, we had a database that was being, there was an attempt to compromise it, and someone trying to get in and get some of the information that consumers were sending to us under licensing. And it was discovered that that system was a little bit old and needed to be upgraded. Working with digital services, they believe this database should be replaced for more security reasons. So that's why we're asking for a one-time ask of about a little over $1 million.
$1 million would replace the system entirely?
Correct. That's our understanding.
Is this software then? Yes. This a database is something that is already designed. It's just a matter of procuring the software.
Amy, maybe you could elaborate, or Nicole, if you want to elaborate a little bit more on that.
Two, okay.
Yeah, our understanding from ADS is that we would be looking to have the same functionality in a newer system that has better coding behind it. Apparently, the coding behind this system is obsolete, and that's why it was, there was an attempt to take data. Wasn't successful, but ADS recommended that we replace it.
Hey, Anson,
Yes.
in the slaughterhouse piece, can you give us an idea of how many there is now, what our capacity is, and where we're going to? Because I know we're trying to expand and talk about all that. And I still, even with the expansion, hear all the time about how lacking where we are is to what the demand is.
Yeah. I'll give you a couple of positive signs. We've received some, again, some USDA money through rural development. We put some working lands money in. We've also got some other resources to help with capacity. One particular facility that's going on for an upgrade now is in Ferrisburg. So that one, they hope with these improvements, once they're completed, they may be able to process about 30% more of the animals through that facility in Ferrisburg. On the poultry side, we've had a little bit of expansion. I was up in Isle of Mont. We had a $200,000 federal grant that went into that poultry processing facility, and they've increased their processing from 1 day to 2 days, and they've opened up some new markets there. Later in our presentation, we are asking for a significant one-time infusion that we hope will help the meat industry. We're actually asking for a $10 million program that would address meat, produce, and maple. It's a one-time ask in general fund money, and we believe that we still have a lot more work to do to process more within the region. We need improvements in infrastructure because labor is also a tremendous issue. But if we can make some of the infrastructure improvements in the slaughterhouses, we believe it will become more efficient. There may not be as many employees needed, and they can put more through with upgrades and proper equipment. But we still have a lot of work to do. Again, people get discouraged if they cannot get their animals in to be processed or slaughtered. So it's another one that we just got to keep working on, both federal and state funds, if we're going to make some real progress and make a dent on this.
Have we made any progress in, like, I hear a lot of the larger animals, the beef, the pork, we've got some body of, but there isn't really anything out there for the smaller animals, goats, sheep, that sort of stuff. So have we made any progress there?
I don't think we probably have not made any progress with the small ruminants, and you're absolutely correct. My understanding and talking with some of the owners, it's a difficult cut. It's not something that's as profitable as if you're doing pork or if you're doing beef. And there are a few areas we've kicked the tires on looking at. There is a mobile unit, I believe it's Wyoming, that is inspected, that's working on some of the smaller ruminants. So we've got to do some more research on that, but that was one pocket that we thought that needed at least us to look at it and see if that could help with some of the folks that want to do lamb or goat. We also need to be thinking about the new Americans that are coming to Vermont now. The Muslim population, we have about 5,000 Muslim population, and they want halal meat with lamb and goat. So we need to, that audience is growing as well. And that's important because my understanding, talking with folks from the refugee resettlement program, food access is right at the top of the list, right there with housing as far as needs. and making sure they have the culturally appropriate food for them. So you're right. We need to work more on that. And hopefully, if we can get this $10 million across the finish line, that might address some of our issues with the meat capacity. But it's all dedicated toward processing in that particular pocket.
So the 10 million that we haven't gotten to yet, which is one time for meat and maple, are you actually talking about more slaughterhouses because one time is, one time as opposed to when you're adding 2 meat inspectors that are going to be ongoing positions, or so it looks to me like you actually have 4 positions, 2 food safety specialists and then 2 meat inspectors. Is that how to read that chart?
Let me see. So I know there's 2 meat inspectors. There's 1 for charging stations. I think that's it, right, Amy? On that particular side of it?
That's correct.
So a meat inspector is under that food safety specialist
Yes.
title?
Yeah, there are 2,
Okay.
two for there and 1 for the EV charging.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was reading it correctly. Yeah.
Yeah, Anson, when you were reporting on the 2 meat inspectors, what did you use for percentage, federal versus state?
65 federal, 35 state.
So what happens to the other 10?
Oh,
It's-
did I?
That's 100% right there.
65 to 30.
Oh, 65,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
50.
Yes.
And
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
it's 64-36.
Okay.
All right, 64-36.
Correct. 64% federal, 36%
Okay.
special
Gee, we ought to
funds.
make everybody a meat inspector if we can get the match.
Yeah, we're fortunate to have that arrangement.
Okay, why don't we, unless there are further questions on this slide, we're obviously getting ahead a bit, but that's great. So
Yeah.
shall we go to the
So,
next?
okay, why don't we go to 13, Amy? I think we're on to the ag development yes, there we go. So this is the one that highlights, what's been happening with the Dairy Innovation Center. We had to hire some folks that are being paid by USDA to make sure we can get the programs out to folks, get the grants, get the contracts done. And then also, if you look down to our 2 big asks for economic development, essentially it's a $13 million one-time ask. And we talked about the working lanes a little bit, but I wanted to give you just a highlight of, where the ask came from in the $10 million ask. The governor appointed a commission about 18 months ago on the future of ag. And this is one of the areas that I recommended to the governor that we invest in Vermont. And particularly, these are areas that we traditionally have not been able to fund either through some of the working lands programs, some of the USDA programs, some of our other state funds. We are covered under the USDA dairy program with the Innovation Center, but maple continues to be our number 2 agriculture industry in Vermont. There's still room for growth there. There's still pockets that need help. And then produce, that's an area that traditionally we have not made significant investments. This would cover fruits, vegetables, and grains. And then we talked about the meat infrastructure. So this particular program would come to the Agency of Agriculture. It's general fund dollars. We'd stand up a program, and some of the uses could possibly be for livestock handling equipment, meat processing, work on energy efficiency programs for farms. We could work on agritourism efforts. We also could support on-site and farm worker accommodations. We could do market development, marketing assistance, packaging innovation, all of those areas that would be eligible. Anyone working in the meat and poultry, fruit and vegetable, and maple industries would be eligible for these grants. And we would use general fund dollars. We have a working document draft. It's about a 3-pager that we could send along to you if you want a little more deeper dive on this particular program. We've shared it with some other members of the legislature, and it gives you sort of the project descriptions we're thinking about, the objectives, and the program design, and it gives you a little flavor of what the request range for funding would be. We hope to do more significant dollar grants because they have a bigger impact than some of our working lands programs. But we would gladly share that with you. And we're thinking we probably could do 40 to 60 awards to the agriculture industry through this particular $10 million program.
So this would be operated separately. So it would be a different application process. I mean, I see a nexus there, obviously, between what you're describing, that 10 million on the future, and what you'd be funding in working land. So this would be a different application process.
Yes, it would be. We would be reviewed by the Agency of Agriculture, and I think there's an important thing that gives this one a little more flexibility than maybe the Working Lands program, because the Working Lands, as I mentioned earlier, really has to follow the food chain, and you have to have an impact beyond just your operation. So say we have a fantastic application that comes in with maple that really improves that farm or that producer, but it doesn't have an impact with other producers down the lane. It doesn't score as high. This particular program, I think we'd have more flexibility. We could do more grants, and we could also, if we were funding this, maybe with the working lands, we could have some more focus on those areas that we really wanted to focus on there, so those dollars aren't being used up. So in the end, it looks like it's a $14 million investment in agriculture, infrastructure, processing, all those areas, because we do see more and more people wanting to purchase and consume local food and regional food, as we are all trying to get to those markets that may be a little bigger outside of the state of Vermont. So we're pretty encouraged by this, and we hope that we can get it, because we see it as a one-time opportunity to do this under our financial situation that's happening in Vermont right now. So happy to send along that draft document, and it'll give you a flavor and some more meat on the bone is what we're thinking about with this particular program.
Okay. Questions? I can't see anyone. So if not, I'm going to continue. I assume our Ag Committee will be taking probably more information and more detailed update on the paper that you're talking about. Shall we move to the
and I think
crosswalk?
The crosswalk, we've gone over those. I think, what's the first one, Amy? 17, I think, is the first one I have on my sheet, page 17, and that's this is the public health and ag resource management. Just a couple of highlights. Last year, you funded 2 new positions, and we're working on more soil testing. It all depends on how this climate goes with PFAS and how we're testing the soil there. So those positions are there, and they're going to do more testing with our soils with those positions in the farm division. So I think that's pretty much. We haven't really asked any big asks in that. We did move our hemp positions over to the Cannabis Control Board. That would be a different. There was one vacancy, and then we had one employee that did move over to the Cannabis Control Board, and those were inspectors. But that's all being housed there now, and I think that's the highlight on the farm division.
All right, pretty straightforward.
Yep. Lab is going well. A couple of things I do want to highlight that you may hear about from the institutions committee. We have a situation where the heating system that is tied into the college there The new lab is 3 or 4 years old. We're getting our heating system from VTC. That has had a lot of heartburn over the last year and a half. Lots of changes happening at that college, and the heat has become unreliable, and it's really critical for the work that's being done in the lab. And if it's not working properly, it can disrupt the tests that are going on. So we have been working with Buildings and General Services on getting an independent heat source. So we build our own heating system at the lab, and that ask is making its way through the. We've presented before the institutions committees, so we're making our way through that process. I just wanted to highlight that, as you may get some questions about the heating system. Other than that, things are pretty much on schedule at the lab as far as our general fund budget. Clean water, all going well there. Plenty of dollars, not asking for anything more there. I think it's sort of the work's being done.
Where we're seeing an increase, Anson, not an increase, but again this year, the soil conservation districts are asking to have their base appropriation increased. I believe the amount is what, 3 million, Bobby?
Yes.
Yeah. Last year we did increase it modestly. I don't know if they came to you and anyway expressed what they're doing, and I assume that they're also getting federal funding as well, because obviously they wouldn't be doing too much with the appropriation that we currently provide.
Yeah, they're valuable partners, both with the state work. They have a lot of people that work, right in the field, right on the ground. And I know you did increase their base last year. They do work with federal folks. It's a solid organization that's doing tremendous work. No one came to me personally and asked for anything. So, but I don't know. They may have touched base with Diane or Amy or Nicole. I don't know, but no one came to me directly. But it's a solid organization though. They do good work.
And is their work really all agricultural focused? Their USDA, I believe, creation.
Yes, they do a lot of working one-on-one with farmers throughout the state of Vermont, depending where their district is located, and a lot of technical assistance, and they work on making sure that these projects get done and they're important to water quality.
Senator Starr, did you have a comment?
Well, I'm pretty sure we raised their budget last year to $1 million. And what they'd like to do, as far as I know, is raise that to 3 this year.
Yeah, I don't remember it was quite that high, but anyway, I just wanted the secretary to know that that was a request among the many that we received for funding over and above what the governor's proposed.
Thank you. So where are we, Amy? Do we have any more crosswalks? I know I think that was it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
so
it.
we have, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yep, that's it for crosswalks.
Okay. And then we do have we include some of our performance measures that we do. We track, on page 21, you can look at the number of license and registrations. And we try to keep an eye on where the trends are, where the needs are, how we're doing. So there's a number of performance measures throughout the tail end of our budget, and they're all highlighted there. If you go to page 31, there's a snippet there on the working lands, as you mentioned, some data there of some of the work that's been done.
Back on the inspections, a number of years ago, we passed a bill that allowed restaurants to serve uninspected chickens if in fact they noted on the menu that they were serving uninspected chickens. And I just wondered, is that still, and maybe that gets into the health department, but it was something that some of us had concern that, if in fact restaurants were putting that notation on their menu, and what the status is in terms of the selling of uninspected fowl?
I think that's still in place, but it's very limited. That my understanding is very limited that restaurants do that. I think to get into the bigger markets and make sure you can get into retail, I think a lot of them have turned to getting inspected meat. The Happy Bird one I talked about with Isle Lamont, they were kind of in a hybrid program that's been launched with the help of USDA, and they're allowed now under that program. It's not full USDA federal inspection, but under this arrangement we worked with USDA, they are allowed to sell across state lines. So that was important to them. They're in the islands, so they've been able to sell some of their poultry into New York, which is opening up. And we see that with a lot of our facilities that may be on the borders, either on the New Hampshire border or all in the New York or down towards Bennington, and they can get into Massachusetts and New York. And so it's important to them. So I don't think there's a lot of people that are doing that. I think it's still in place. You're right. I think it was, maybe a decade ago, there was a lot of flurry of activity of that and a lot of debate about it. But I think there's probably a few out there, but I have not heard of any issues, complaints, or asked for more of that.
Okay. I didn't even know whether there was a menu in this entire state of Vermont that would have that annotation on it at this point. Okay.
Is there any other under the any of the programmatic performance measures or anything that anyone has any questions on? There's a number of them there. You can see everything from water quality to consumer protection. I think that's the at the end of it on page 41. There's some carry forward program. Yes, go ahead.
There's always quite a lot of questions in regards to mosquito control. Is that being properly funded to handle that particular issue? Because people down on the western side of Vermont usually have major concerns over the mosquito control money.
Right now, I think we're okay. Of course, it all depends on what kind of season we get. You're right. We have a couple of districts down in Addison County. But right now, I think it was a pretty quiet year last year. We didn't hear a lot of issues. But as far as I can tell, I have not received asked for any increase in funding or any real issues related to the program down there. Of course, the spring may be a different story. Sometimes at the end of the session, we get an early hatch and it comes up. But right now, I have not heard of any major concerns out of that area.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, other questions? Can't see the committee. Well, I'm sure that you'll be having more contact with our agriculture. The other big request is the one that is under consideration, and that is, it was brought up, and that is the situation that organic dairy farmers are confronting at this point. So that's something that we've asked our ag committee to really explore. There have been times in the past that we have provided funding in some way or other. Last time I think was to help with premium assistance through that federal program if the cost of feed, I believe, was high relative to the per hundredweight reimbursement. So that's the only other large expenditure related to ag that I'm aware of, in addition to the funding request for the well, let me see, for the working, not for working lands, but for it's escaped me at this point. Pardon me. I'm still suffering from COVID, so
no,
for me to
it's the
retain all this.
processing. Yeah, it's the processing one-time ask. And yes, Senator, and I know we've been working with Senator Starr and members of the committee, trying to get as much information and data and sort of the scope of the issue with the organic community and all our dairy farmers. So we've been working behind the scenes a little bit of that, and I'm sure as we move along throughout the session, we'll have more discussions with Senate Ag and try to figure that issue out for you.
Okay.
I think we have you coming in the first week we come back, people on trying to figure out the program, if we did proceed, how we could do it. So no, that's all working fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Senator Kitchen, I do have a question.
Yes, Senator Kirtley.
Yes, Secretary Tebbetts, I wonder if you had any information about that heating system at the lab at VTC. I remember when that was built, there was a lot of discussions about whether to tie in or not tie in, whether a pellet system was going to be used there or not. I just wonder if those discussions have gotten to the point of what type of heating system you and BGS are looking at.
I think the where we're at now, there would be some planning money, and so there would be an assessment of what the need is and what that system might be. So there's an ask, and we're making and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, we would make a $500,000, $500,000 into that. There's I want to say a $300,000 to $400,000 request to do the assessment of what kind of system we want. And then the bigger capital expenditure, and I believe it's in a $3.4 or $4 million system, but I don't think it's been designed yet. My understanding is the permits are all in place that we could do it on site. There's no issues with the Act 250 permit. There's plenty of land that's able to do that system, but the steam heat that's coming across the road into our system has become really unreliable. That's working its way through. I don't think they've designed exactly what they want, but they've got some work to do before we get to the capital expenditure.
How much do we pay for the lab if we're going to be paying, by the time you get done with an assessment and the estimated cost, $4 million for heating a building? How much we pay to construct it? That
would be the construction cost. I think that's the construction of the new system would be 3.4.
No, I meant to build the lab in the first place.
I think, Amy, we had this question. How much was it when we built it? It was before my time. We opened it up 4 years ago, but I think at the time from the testimony, 38 million, I wanted to say. Maybe
I'm not sure. I'd have to.
My understanding is the heating system, testimony that I've listened to, my understanding is it came down to cost at the end of not having an independent system, and the first thing that they had to design was a system through VTC, and that's why they went that. But there was an MOU that was created that said in the future they needed to look at an independent heating system as well. So it was one of the last things that had to be trimmed to make the budget work and the capital bill back in the day when they were building the lab.
So we trimmed it and probably are going to end up spending more.
I'm not sure. I think there may be some savings on the heating bill itself. And I know Buildings and General Services is working on that. There may be some savings over time of, the calculation of what we're paying VTC for that heat. But it's the problem is we've had to shut down a few days last summer, and they couldn't do their work because of the sensitivity of the atmosphere and humidity and heating within the lab that needs to be there to make sure that the experiments and the testing is all done properly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Other questions of committee? Nicole, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to say that we recently gave testimony on this to House institutions, and our director at the lab gave a really succinct presentation with BGS. If you would like me to share that, it was really helpful for me.
You mean right this minute?
Oh, no, not right this minute. I can share after.
I'd be interested. You can send it to me. I don't know if the rest of
Okay.
the committee hears enough.
Okay, I think probably you're interested in what type of heat source that they are contemplating, Senator Perch, like if I can read your mind.
Yes, you're very astute.
Mhm. Okay, other questions from the committee? So is the SAP running today?
It was not really running too well up here in St. Albans, but it has been running a little bit. I've seen some people have been boiling this week. I think it's been so-so. We had some early runs, as you know, and I think the UVM Extension was there, and Mark from UVM Extension thought the highest he's heard is one producer had like 30% of their crop. So we're still way early. And, we got another snowstorm coming in Saturday or Friday night, Saturday. Plenty of snow up here in Franklin County. So as the saying goes, you can make a lot of maple in April. So that may be the case this year.
A lot depends on your location of your sugar woods. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm just looking at my committee and I can't, and I see, Senator Baruth, hello. I don't see anyone with their hand up. So unless there are further questions, we're going to rely on our ag committee to kind of look at what you're doing in greater detail and the money that's being requested. And I think, Andrea, this is the only testimony that we have scheduled for today. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to adjourn the committee and we are going to reconvene after we take next week off for town meeting, and hopefully all of us will be there in person once again. It's kind of like deja vu in some ways. It was COVID that shut us down. In 2020, March 13th, we left and never returned for a couple of years. So it's kind of ironic. We're kind of in the same place, at least some of us at that, 3 years ago. So with that, I'm going to adjourn the committee until we reconvene after town meeting week, and thank everyone for your testimony.